Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I have with me a wonderful jazz vocalist who has a very storied history who we're about to learn about. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Tracey Whitney. Tracey, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Michael. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So we have crossed paths numerous times, but I don't know a whole lot about you. And when I started doing some research, my eyes opened up quite a bit. So let's talk
Uh-oh.
about some of this. Oh no, it wasn't bad.
Okay.
So you are from the LA area. Were you born
Yes.
and raised in Los Angeles?
I was born in Portland, Oregon, but my family moved to LA when I was 5, so that's home.
Okay, that makes perfectly good sense.
Yeah.
And what part of LA? Because what you say LA is a gigantic city. So what
Yeah.
part of LA are you from?
I am from LA proper. So if you think of like, say, Miracle Mile, the Miracle Mile Wilshire area, so that
Mhm.
gives people more of a place to zero in on if you have to. But
Okay.
yeah, so I'm from LA proper.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense. Okay, so now you grew up in an extremely musical family.
Yes.
And so tell me about your parents and about the Whitney family band. Tell me some more about this.
Yeah, well, both of my parents were singers, so they were professional singers, and they ended up having 8 kids that all came out singing. So when I was about 11, the Jackson Five were out, and every kid in the world wanted to be in a singing group. And my mom and my Aunt Mary and my Uncle Jimmy, and I will say my Aunt Mary was in Wonderlove with Stevie Wonder. And if you know that song, As, that vocalist is my aunt who is singing that until the rainbow burns the stars out in the sky. That's my Aunt Mary. And my Uncle Jimmy toured with Santana. My mom toured with Solomon Burke and a few other people. And so they had a group together that they called Whitney, Whitney, and Whitney. Well,
Okay.
they were upstairs rehearsing one day, and me and my brothers were downstairs rehearsing. And my mom stopped the adults and she's like, "Are those my kids?" And the next thing you know, we're at the Coconut Grove doing our first gig. And my mom left her brother and sister to form a group with her children. And that's how the Whitney family was born. And I've been singing ever since I was that 11-year-old at the Coconut Grove
Professionally, right? Singing professionally ever
professionally.
since then.
I
So,
haven't never stopped. Yeah.
well, I hope not. So if you don't mind me asking, what number are you in the 8 kids?
I'm the third
Oh, you're
child.
the third oldest.
I'm
Okay.
the, yeah, I'm the first girl, third child. So there's 5 behind me. Yeah.
Boy,
And
that
everybody
makes
was singing. It was fantastic.
well, that makes for an interesting dynamic. So,
Yeah.
so you're see, it's interesting how you really didn't have a choice with all that music there and all that
Yeah.
singing. It was
Yeah.
almost like it was there for you to pick up on.
Did not have a choice, and it came natural. It was so natural. And our mother taught us everything. We didn't go to school to learn how to sing. My mom was an amazing singer, and she taught us everything. And some of the tricks of the trades my mom taught me, I'm teaching my own kids now at school because I'm a jazz vocal teacher, and I'm using those same skills that my mom gave me to teach my kids how to protect their throat, for the long run. And no, don't do it like that. Stop. You're straining your throat. You're singing wrong. So yeah, it's really good lessons that she taught that I'm actually now able to pass on to other
Pass
people.
on. Okay.
Mhm.
And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So now with the Whitney family band,
It's the
you
Whitney
were
family. So
oh, okay. So the word band is not on there.
right. That's what I had to have for the website.
Oh, okay.
The Whitney family was already gone. I don't know who those people were, but so I had to put bands.
Okay, so I'll put a link down below for this. But so the
Yeah,
Whitney family, you guys performed for like 15 years as a group. Is
yeah,
that true?
that is true. My entire childhood through my early 20s. Um, yeah, and my family, even once I left the family, they still continued performing another 10 years or so. So
Wow.
yeah, but I am
That's
the last one still singing. I'm the only one. Well, actually, I'm going to take that back because my mom still gigs from time to time in Vegas. She lives in Las Vegas and she's still up there gigging. So
see, longevity. It's a great thing. So with those 15 years that you
yeah.
performed in the group, you toured the world, right?
Well, we did a lot of touring. I mean, we toured mostly Asian nations and but all over the United States, and we just were everywhere. We had a Billboard magazine top singles pick. You know, we recorded. We did everything. You know, the summertime we were on the road. During the school year, we would come home, take a nap, get ready for the gig, and go do after hours.
So what was that like? Here you are, 11, 12, 15, 16, you said into your early 20s,
Oh yeah,
and you're touring
yeah,
like this, and you're touring with your family. Boy, that
yeah.
dynamic must have been interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's my family, so it
Not
was
all
pretty
families
great.
get along. I mean,
Yeah, my family is really funny, you know, so everybody in my family, for the most part, is really hysterical.
okay.
So it was always just jokes and jokes and jokes. And every summer when it was time to go on the road, we would just spontaneously break into when we were packing up the van on the road again. You know, so we do that every year.
Well, so see, now that was a good, so those are good memories. Those are
Yeah,
good experiences that you had,
yeah,
right? Okay.
yes,
All right. I just want to make sure because not everybody had that good vibe in their family when it comes to something like this.
yeah.
And I'm sure there was just as many bad as good things that happened to family. And it seems like yours was always a good experience.
Yeah, for the most part, I mean, we are human, you know, so, you know, not everything was fantastic, but for the when I think about my family and I think about my experience performing with my family, I only remember the good stuff. So
Okay.
I would have to like kind of stop and think about, there was that time, you know, but yeah, for the most part, I mean, you know, and it was really cool because, you know, just in addition to touring, you know, we did Vegas and Tahoe and all that stuff. So we would um, you know, be in a space for a time, you know,
Okay.
so not like going to a different place every day. And so but yeah, it was a phenomenal experience. I wouldn't trade my childhood.
Not at all.
Would have probably been nice to be able to go to some football games or something like that, or do things that other people did in high school.
Yeah, but
Um,
you did things that
didn't get
most
any of
people
that.
don't get a chance to do.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
the good part. So when you got older and
Hmm.
you kind of said, all right, that's it. I've kind of seen the writing on the wall and this was
Yeah,
like early 20s. So in 1991, you
yeah,
auditioned, and I say auditioned, so to speak, for Ray
yeah,
Charles. And you were auditioning to be part of his Raylettes. Did I say that right?
yes.
Raylettes? Which
Uh-huh. Yeah,
the Raylettes were the backup singers for his group. So
yeah.
tell me about your audition because I understand it was just a bit odd.
It was very odd. I got a call on a Wednesday, and the person on the phone said, Mr. Charles would like to see you tomorrow. And I'm like, who is Mr. Charles? Right. So, you know, then they finally brought the whole thing. Mr. Ray Charles would like to audition you tomorrow. So I wasn't looking for the gig. He was not on my radar. And so this is back in the day when we had cassettes, right? So I have my
Right.
little demo, and I decided, let me take my demo with me. So I take my little bio, I take my little demo because I'm a professional, so I've got my whole thing, right? So I go to the audition where Mr. Charles was unavailable. So after calling me in to audition for him, there's no audition. But I was prepared, so I was like, well, I can leave my demo.
Right.
And they're like, great. So I leave the demo. This is on Thursday. They call me Thursday night, you got the gig. Friday, we were rehearsing. Sunday, we were at the Playboy Jazz Festival. Monday, we were in Denver, and boom, that was it. And that's how fast it happened. And I wasn't even looking for a gig.
That's funny. So they called you to audition, you get to the audition and he's not even there.
Right. But I left my demo because I was prepared.
See, that's called being a professional musician.
Right.
Nowadays, you don't have to carry the cassette, so you don't have to you can send stuff to somebody, but it helps to be prepared. So that's a lesson for all of us to remember.
Right. So that's how that happened.
And you toured with him for how long? How long did you tour with him?
I did the Pepsi tour. Remember you got the right one, baby.
Yes.
Yeah, so I did that, and everybody was like, were you an girl? Because they thought I looked like just like those girls in the commercial. I was like, well, thank you very much. I'm flattered. No, those were actresses. I'm a singer. But it was really nice. So yeah, I did the Pepsi tour.
Okay.
And I still have my tour jacket, which is pretty awesome. I think I'll get it framed. It's just hanging in the closet.
So that tour wasn't that like just over a year?
1991, yeah.
Oh, so it was a full year. See, now that's great. That would be an experience of, again, here's another experience of a lifetime that you had an opportunity to participate in.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So let's talk about 1995, because in late 1995, you moved to Japan for 4+ years.
Yeah.
Why? Well, I mean, it's not that I'm not criticizing it. I'm just curious, what's the story behind moving to Japan?
I loved Japan. Okay, so the story behind, so we pick up where I leave the Ray Charles. My tour is over, and I go back home to my apartment that I had no intentions of leaving that Tuesday before that Wednesday call. So I go back home to my house, and I call a temp agency, and I'm like, hey, I'm in town, so if something comes up, keep me in mind. So the next day they call and they say, we have a half day at Playboy. So Playboy Entertainment.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I don't have anything else to do. So I go to Playboy for a half day. I end up being there for almost 5 years because it was the best company I've ever worked for. And I've worked for Playboy and Disney and Weeder and Lifetime. And I mean, like, major organizations, but Playboy was the family company, believe it or not. So, but I'm at Playboy and I'm having such a great time that I end up not singing because I'm like just having a ball, right? I mean, it's Playboy, there's parties, there's this, there's that. And I mean, I still got to work, but and I'm like in finance, and the finance was the party department, go figure. Anyway, I decide one day, I wake up and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm not singing. And, so I call my mom and I'm like, I got to quit my job. And she said, why would you do that? You love that job. Exactly. I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. So I go in and I tell my boss, who then is like, what are you talking about? You love it here. And I'm like, I know, that's why I have to go. I'm going to do. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know that I can't do this. 2 days after that call to my boss, the conversation with my boss, I get a call from a booking agent who needs somebody to go to Japan.
Really?
Out of the blue. Like, I don't even know how they got my phone number, but they called and they're like, do you want to go to Japan? And 2 months later, I was in Japan and I spent nearly the next 5 years gigging over there. And
so what was that like? So you go to Japan.
Yeah.
with the opportunity to perform. But tell me of what that was like to perform. So we're talking in the mid 1990s to the early
Just
2000s.
about 2000. Yeah.
So
95 to 2000.
what was that like to play in Japan? I'm assuming you had a good audience, otherwise you wouldn't have stayed.
Oh, fantastic. First, let me let you know that most of the clubs, all of the clubs, I think they probably still are, but the clubs that I worked in were Yakuza clubs, right?
Okay.
So
Explain, what does that mean?
that's the mafia.
Oh,
Right.
okay, got
So
it.
the Japanese mafia, so the Yakuza, right?
Right.
So they owned all the clubs and stuff. So if you were working there, you were working for them. And which was way cool. I mean, they were amazing audiences, crazy tips. If I made under $1,000 a day, I'd be like, I only made $800 today in tips. That was tips, not
Tips.
my booking agent provided me with an apartment, a driver, per diem. I mean, everything I needed plus my salary. So everything was provided. And then I, had my gig. And so I worked, and on my days off, they would book me for session work, or I'd be doing some TV show with a Japanese superstar or doing a concert. So I didn't have any days off. I worked and worked and worked, but I loved it. The people were amazing. And, I developed some relationships there that I still have today.
So what kind of group did you work with? Was it just a rhythm section and you singing?
Just a piano.
Just piano.
Piano and vocal. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Boy, see, look at that. Here's another experience that you've had that most people would never even dream of experiencing. And yet here you are. You went from performing as a kid to performing with Ray Charles to performing in Japan. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
My life's a little nuts. Yeah.
No, I think it's awesome. Talk about being in the right place at the right time for the right situation. And boy, you must have built up some really good chops doing that. I mean, as you said, you performed every single day the whole time you were there.
I performed literally every day. I could probably count on two hands the number of days in almost 5 years that I had off. And that goes back to my mom, and teaching us how to sing. And basically, I never would have come home because my life was so good over there. But I developed bronchitis because everyone smokes and I don't smoke. And so that secondhand smoke finally, took over, but I never would have left Japan.
So let's talk about that, because when you left Japan, tell me what happened, because there's a gap in there that I'd love to hear about. You left Japan because you were sick and you had the bronchitis.
And I developed Graves' disease. It's a thyroid disease.
Okay.
We're not sure where it came from, but it affected my eyes. And it was a pretty brutal 6 years of surgeries and reconstructive surgeries. Marty Feldman, remember how his eyes were pushed out? My eyes, and we're not sure if it was because of the smoke that I was exposed to. We don't know where it came from, but I got something that nobody in my family had ever had. And so I think it was something to do with something, while I was living there.
Okay.
So, yeah, for a year, I couldn't even close my eyes. And then after it burned itself out, the Graves' disease, which attacks different parts of different people's bodies, mine attacked my eyes. And so after the burnout, you have to wait for it to burn itself out. They can't force it. They just have to wait. I was fortunate that mine only lasted a year. But after that, I had 6 years of reconstructive surgery.
Oh,
I
no.
just had to keep tweaking to get my eyes back to normal.
Were you in LA at the time?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was in LA.
Okay. So when you left Japan, you were in LA. So now then in 2012, you moved to Albuquerque. And so why Albuquerque?
It is so very specific, Michael. A voice woke me up at 4 in the morning and loudly said, "You have to move to Albuquerque."
That's it.
And I was in my apartment in North Hollywood, Burbank and Colfax. And I sat up in the bed and I was like, what the? And it said it again. "You have to move to Albuquerque." And I'm like, why would I move to Albuquerque? I have this big life. I was back to performing. I was, just, I was looking good, because I had the #1 doctor in the world that fixed my eyes at the Jill Stein Eye Institute. His name is Robert Goldberg. Anyway, so for a year, I tried to ignore it, but that voice was just would not let me go. And so a year later, I finally came to Albuquerque. And I drove, so I didn't get here till night, and I was exhausted, go to my hotel. I come out in the morning, and that blue sky hit me like a rock. And I will tell you, I felt like I went through a tunnel, like you could actually hear like a whoosh kind of sound.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, oh my God, I'm home.
So a voice told you to come to
Yeah.
Albuquerque, and you tried to ignore it, but you
Yes.
couldn't. So then you got here. And when you said you were driving in, so you came from the west, so you must have come down right down 9 Mile Hill. And to see all the lights twinkling, that must have been an interesting experience right then and there.
Because of course my brain is going, why would I move to some cowpoke town, right? I knew nothing about Albuquerque, other than that Bugs Bunny meant to, should have taken a left here.
Left turn, yeah.
Yeah, I should have made a left at Albuquerque. But I knew nothing about it. And I came over that hill and the city was just laid out before me. And I said, oh, this is a real city. And then the next day I come out and I get slammed by that blue sky. And I was like, I am home. And it took me
nice.
3 years to get here after I got that first, voice in my head. Well, it was only one voice, but it never stopped. It was like, you gotta move, you gotta move, you gotta move. And that's how I got here.
Oh, that's interesting. So you got here in 2012.
Yeah.
What was your intention? What was your idea? What were you got here. Now what? What were you going to do?
Well, the good news is I had the good fortune of being laid off from Weeder Publications after American media bought Weeder.
Okay.
And, when we got laid off because they moved everything to New York, we got a very nice severance package. So I was okay, believe it or not, for a couple of years.
Okay.
So it would have gotten me half as far in LA, but it got me twice as far.
Oh, yeah. Out here?
In Albuquerque. So I was able to move here and not have to worry about any finances for a bit,
Okay.
But I moved here thinking, that I was going to have to build what, the jazz thing that I wanted to do. And I got here and found a thriving jazz community. I was blown away. And not only were they thriving, but they were so welcoming and, and inclusive. And I got immediately swallowed into this family of musicians. These are like the Borg, right? I was
assimilated. You got assimilated, didn't you?
I was assimilated. That's one of my favorite union things. It's like, yeah, you've been assimilated. So that's how I ended up being welcomed into the community. I started gigging almost immediately, and I've been gigging ever since.
Yeah. In 2007, you started a company, an entrepreneurial company, and it's called, I want to get it right, Baby Doll Entertainment and Records, right?
Right.
So the whole idea behind Baby Doll Entertainment was to establish a a corporation that you can operate, because we'll talk about some of your production things too.
Yeah.
So this is what you used as your company, right?
And it's a branding thing
Right.
as well. So it's, anything to do with me, goes under Baby Doll,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
like if I'm doing a gig and you need to do a contract with me, it's going to be Baby Doll.
So now, when you released your first album, which was
Yeah.
in 2007, and your first album is called Love, A Fable in 9 Acts, that was 2007.
Right.
Your second one was in 2012 when you got here, or was it before you
Just
got?
before
Okay.
I had the release party the week before I moved to New
Okay.
Mexico.
And that one's called I Am Singing Songs I Love, and that one was released
Yeah.
in 2012. And then your third release, which was released in 2017, is called Live at the Outpost Performance Space.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 albums that are in your or under your company's name.
Right.
So I listened to all 3 albums, and I must say, now the first 2 are very contemporary in nature, very and I don't want you to be upset, but I use the word popish.
Yeah, no, that's
R&B,
right.
popish. I mean,
Yes, that's
very
exactly
contemporary,
right.
or you can even say contemporary jazz in stylings. And then your third one was very much straight ahead jazz vocals. So let's talk about your third one, the one that was recorded at the Outpost Performance Space. And before I do that, so the Outpost Performance Space, for people who don't know, is located in Albuquerque. It's run by Tom Goralnik. So tell me, how did this recording come about? And tell me some more stories about this recording.
So this story came about. Tom and I served together on the board of directors of the African American Performing Arts Center. But prior to that, Tom had hired me a few times prior to do concerts at the Outpost. So, when they did the summer concerts. And so I've done probably 4 or 5 since I've lived here in New Mexico. And he'd asked me to do, that concert. And I was like, hey, can we record it? And he was like, sure. And that's how that happened.
And it was a great concert because you had Denny DeSanti playing, you had Paul Gonzalez, you had Sid Fenley. So anybody who's interested in that album needs to go and look it up, because all 3 of them are really good. But boy, I really did like the Outpost one. I thought that was very, I want to say, I don't even know how to explain it, because it was a complete departure from the other ones that you'd had done.
Yeah.
I mean, a complete departure.
I want to go back to one thing before we get any further into that. And I would like to give Ray Charles some credit, because when I started singing with Ray, I was the 4th harmony, right? Okay. So I was the 4th part. And it was really hard for me after a lifetime of being the melody with my family, so I'm like the 3rd. But when I was with Ray, I was the 4th. And it took a while for my brain kept kept being pulled naturally, to the 3rd. But once the 4th clicked in, I was like, oh my God. And he exploded my head with harmonies. And so on the other song, the other album, like I'm singing Songs I Love, especially, I am able to, because of Ray and because of having to rewire my brain to accept that 4th part, now I'm able to put all of these different harmonies together and put harmonies inside of harmonies, and just things just going in and out of one another, which I may not have done if I hadn't had that experience with Ray Charles.
And it shows. I agree with that. It shows completely. Again, I did like the first 2 albums, and I liked the way they sounded. They just, it was interesting because I'd heard you sing here in town numerous times. And it was when I was listening to these albums, I'm like, wait, this is not what I expected.
That's the same person?
Yeah. Wait. It was just so, it was such a departure. And I realized that at the time, that's what was popular, and that's what you recorded. but it wasn't what I was expecting. And so when I heard the Outpost performance, I was like, oh, well, now this is what I was expecting, because it sounds like you, and it sounds like that jazz vocal, and you love to communicate with your audience. I like that. You've always done that. Every time I've seen you perform, when you talk to the audience and you interact with the audience, which is such a blessing. It's so much fun to watch you do this.
Well, I will give you then another anecdote that the reason I sing jazz, when I was about 17, we were at the Playboy Club in Century City, my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I will let you know that I am the only person in the world that has done these three things: sang at the Playboy Jazz Festival, sang at the Playboy Club, and worked for Playboy Corporate.
Oh, God.
I have done all three of those. I'm the only person that's ever done that. Anyway, so we're in my life. So we're at the Playboy Club, and Miss Nancy Wilson was in the audience.
Okay.
And she came up to me after the gig and she goes, Tracey, your voice was made for jazz. She told me that at 17. And, it took me some time because my family did pop and R&B. And so took me time. But once I got there, then I was like, this is where I want to be. So I just started singing jazz, and basically, every now and then I might throw in some classic soul, but for the most part, I just do jazz,
Yeah,
and
thank
you, Miss Nancy Wilson, whose son was my sister's boyfriend, and whose niece is my brother's girlfriend.
Oh, no.
We've been mixing it up for 30 years with that family.
That's good. Oh, I love that. So let's talk about some of your things outside of music, but not really outside of music.
Nothing is outside of music.
No, your life revolves around music, but you do some things here in New Mexico that most people have never had an opportunity. So you are a commissioner on the New Mexico Music Commission. Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you've served that position for how long now?
I'm in my second term.
Okay.
So I was appointed by the Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. Love her. So yeah, I'm a music commissioner for the state of New Mexico, and Torrance County is my county that is my county to serve. So there's 15 music commissioners. We all have counties, and our job is to highlight music of New Mexico. So if we can find musicians that are New Mexico based, that's what we do.
The other thing that you do that most people don't realize, unless you're a musician, you are the president of the board of directors. Let's see if I could get this whole thing in here, because it's a big, long title. You are the president of the board of directors of the Musicians Association of Albuquerque, Local 618 of the American Federation of Musicians.
That's it, baby.
What is that like to be? Because, well, okay, so tell me about that position and tell me about the local union.
Okay. So I represent the musicians of the New Mexico Philharmonic, the Santa Fe Symphony, the Santa Fe Opera, and the El Paso Symphony Orchestra. Our local, look at me, boy, I went into a whole different personality, didn't I? Our local has been here for nearly 120 years in Albuquerque. Although my jurisdiction is the state of New Mexico and El Paso, Texas. So my job is to protect the interests of professional musicians in New Mexico.
Okay.
That is my job.
I know it is your job. So how long have you held that position? How, I mean, is that just a recent promotion, or has this been your job for a while?
I'm in my 6th year as president. Prior to that, I was the secretary treasurer.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I'm 6 years.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
And is that, I mean, I know you perform, and we haven't even gotten to some of the production things that you've done. This is your full-time job. That's my job. Is what you do.
Yeah. Well, Tuesday through Friday, and I teach on Mondays.
Right. All right. And we're going to get to, I haven't even gotten to that part yet. I haven't even gotten to that part yet.
I
So
know, stop
what's
me now. Somebody
no,
save me.
absolutely not. So what's it like being the president? Is it, I mean, so I know about the unions in the big cities. I was a member of the union in Denver, and
Mhm.
I know about the ones in LA, and I know about the ones in New York. What's it like to, what's the union like here in Albuquerque and in New Mexico?
Well, I would like to think that once again, you see the orchestras that I represent,
Hmm.
and my job is full time because my job is full time. I am constantly, especially since COVID, I've been in nonstop negotiations. So for 2 years, I negotiated safety protocol.
Hmm.
Make sure my people are safe on the stage. What's the masking thing? What's the vaccination thing? So I was negotiating that. Right now, I'm in the middle of negotiating the collective bargaining agreements for the New Mexico Philharmonic, the El Paso Symphony. The Santa Fe Opera is coming up in June, and we just signed off and ratified the Santa Fe Symphony contract at the end of last year. So, it's real hardcore. My job
Well,
is to protect other musicians, and I'm so grateful to be in a position where, as a working musician, that I protect other musicians.
right. And it's a full-time job
Yeah,
because of the things that you need to do to protect the musicians that you're working for.
absolutely.
And notice how I
Absolutely.
said that. It isn't that you you are working for them. That
I am.
some people don't understand that
Yeah.
is when you're dealing with a union, you're part of the union because they are working for you.
Hmm.
It isn't the way it was, decades and decades and decades ago. It wasn't you were working for the union. The union now works for you. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Right. The union work, but also we need to understand that each member of the union is what the union is.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm the president, but every member makes the union. I can't be, once again we go to the Borg, right? We are
Yeah.
assimilated. Yeah, so I like to make people understand, if they're musicians and they call me and say the union, and I like to say you're the union.
Okay.
We are all the union.
And that makes
So
perfectly good sense.
that's what makes it a union. But
Right.
but my job specifically is to protect them.
Nice. Okay. So let's flip this around just a little bit because you mentioned earlier that you are also an educator and
Yeah.
that you teach jazz vocal mastery at the New Mexico School for the Arts in Santa Fe. So how long have you taught there?
This is my third year.
Okay.
So coming up on the end of my third year, John called me up one day and he's like, I'm teaching up here and I think we need to teach jazz vocals too. And I think you are the perfect person to do it. And that's how I ended up teaching
Nice.
there. I
Very nice.
know, right?
You teach there one day a week?
I teach on Mondays. Yeah.
Okay. Well, not like you have any other time to do anything else. Oh no, no, no. You
I'm
gig on
such a
the
slacker.
weekends. Yeah. Yeah. Union
I'm just a
president,
slacker, man.
teacher, gig. So
Yeah.
so you also produce, you write,
Yeah.
you put together shows, you do
Yeah.
all this stuff.
Nuts.
How do you make the time? And notice I said not find. How do you make the time to balance union
Yeah.
president, educator, gigs? Now you're producing shows, you're writing
Mm.
shows, you're putting together all tribute type things. How do you find the time to do all of this? How do you make the time?
It's nuts, right?
I
It's
don't know how you make the
nuts.
time to do this.
I know.
I mean, I know
I have no idea. When I was over at the Performing Arts Center, yeah, I was able to do a couple of big shows that I had envisioned. We did a Prince Michael Jackson tribute. We did a show, Black music, like a history of, so it took us all the way from the 1800s, to soul, and did like this whole show about that. Zenobia, I hope that you know Zenobia. She's a fantastic blues singer. Zenobia and I have done some shows that
Yeah.
we've produced together.
Yeah.
A tribute to Johnny Otis, and my mother toured with Johnny Otis when I was a kid. So we did a tribute to Johnny Otis. We did a, summer thing last year where we did all these wonderful, summer songs of the 60s. We called it a 60s summer suite. Yeah, it's just nuts, right?
Well, and you have your own band called The Art of Jazz.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so tell me about The Art of Jazz. I mean, I know I've seen you guys have gigs. So
Yeah.
what kind of music is The Art of Jazz? And don't tell me just jazz, because I know it's not just jazz.
For the most part, it is jazz, standards. And we throw in a little this, a
I
little
don't know. The
that.
last time I saw you guys play, it was, boy, you guys would do a jazz standard, and then you'd play some R&B, and then you did some funk, and then
Throw
you
in
did
some Al Green, and
you guys did everything. It
little
wasn't just
gospel.
jazz. It
Yeah.
wasn't. I mean, and you've done other things. You've done tribute, like I said, you've done tribute shows.
Oh, and my Nancy Wilson, guess who I saw today? I've done that. I first did that tribute concert at the Performing Arts Center, and then I did it again at the Outpost. And
I don't know how you make the time for all of this.
I don't have a life.
No, yes, you do.
Outside of music, I do not have a life. So.
Well, okay, but your life is music, right?
Oh, that.
Yeah, well, see, music is life and life is music. And it tends to go back and forth. And not a lot of people understand that. That is a musician's thing. We could talk about that we could do a whole other show on that one. But it's really true, because music is life and life is music. And just because you don't have interest outside of music doesn't mean you don't have a life. Because again, you perform, you do work, you're working for musicians, you're working for yourself. I think it's awesome. So we're running out of time, and I've got time for one more question. And I always ask my musicians this when I'm interviewing. Strangest gig, funniest story of something that happened to you that you could tell us about.
Can I tell you about a gig? Did not necessarily happen to me, but I was on the gig, a crazy Ray Charles gig.
Oh, that's fine. No. If it happened to you, if it's part of your life, absolutely.
Okay. In the middle of a concert, he would cuss us out in front of the audience. So he didn't care, 10,000, 15,000 people, he didn't care. He would just go into it, right? So he starts cussing at the guitarist. I don't know what the guy played. Ray had incredible ears, but he wouldn't allow us to have monitors or anything. So we never knew what we sounded like. So he starts cussing the guy out. And the guy gets up and says, "Play it yourself, you da 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 da," and he leaves. And he never comes back.
Oh no.
And the next day we come back and there's no guitar.
No guitar.
No guitar. I mean, there's the lead guitar, but not,
right, the rhythm guitar.
And I will admit that I sort of made an exit myself, a bit unceremoniously. And it was just like, yeah, this is I'm gonna need to make my own exit. And I did. And apparently he introduced the girls, and it was one girl short.
Oh no, same thing. Oh no, you did the same thing. You exited and didn't come back.
But I gave them notice. I was like, I'm not gonna go to X leg of this. I'm gonna go on and go back home, and gave them time to find someone to replace me and the whole thing. And then it comes time, and I'm like, okay, so when we get to this location, how am I going to get home? Because I'm like, of course they're going to fly me home or give me a bus ticket or something, right? And then the personnel manager goes, well, the policy of Ray Charles Enterprises is wherever you are on our last day, you don't get back on the bus.
That's it.
And I said, well, you're going to leave me there? Well, the policy of Ray Charles Enterprises. And I said, were you going to tell me? I would have just gotten up that day. You know, and I did the professional thing. I gave them time. You know, I gave them notice.
Right.
And they were like, well, you know, and said it once again. But one of my best girlfriends worked for an airline. And before I left California, she gave me a first class ticket to get me home from anywhere in the world. And she's like, you know, I would just feel better knowing that you had, you know, transportation. So I called the airline, got myself a flight. I came home. I was like, they were literally going to leave me there.
Yeah, that was it. You're done. Don't get on the bus. Bye. Have a nice
Yeah,
life.
yeah. And I would have been in a place called Canandaigua, New York.
As hell.
Yeah, they were going to leave me. And my girlfriend called me, the person that I shared the room with. You know, we all bunked together. And she was like, oh my God, it was so funny tonight. He went to introduce us and only 3 of us came out.
Oh God. No comment.
And I was like, they were gonna leave me and not even tell me. So I needed to be where there was an airport.
Yeah. Oh,
I could get home.
what a wonderful story. So listen, we're running out of time. I want to thank Tracey for all the things that you do, all the work that you do, all the wonderful music that you not only produce, but you actually sing and do. And ladies and gentlemen, we will catch you next time.